welcome back everyone. Here we have Mr. Sinister. He's had some work done. What we did previously was we added articulation to his arms. We sanded down details that we didn't want. And we got rid of some things here. And I've gone in with my Dremel and sanded down. You can just see where I've used the Dremel as much as possible to sort of sand in rough sort of material lines, and I've taken away the cuffs that were on his wrists, and I think that should bring you up to about from where I left you in the last video. So what we're going to do, I said we were going to look at sculpting, and we certainly will, but the first bit of sculpting that I do on any figure is I fill in these. These are the peg holes, and these you'll find them on pretty much every action figure. So I'm going to be using my sculpting material Milliput to show you how to very basically use it. And we're going to deal with a little bit, we're going to do some preparation to try and minimize what we call joint rub. I think you should be familiar with what joint rub is, but it is essentially when there is paint on plastic, and when you move the plastic against another surface, the paint is rubbed off. So what we're trying to do when we try to minimize joint rub is we try to make sure that where the points of articulation are, the plastic doesn't rub, and so this will be basically a problem at every joint on the figure. When you've got these hyper articulated figures, it becomes quite a problem, but you'll see that some joints like this one already have quite a bit of clearance, so really joint rub shouldn't be a problem there. But it's always worth just going in and making sure. So what I'm going to do is take the smallest Dremel bit I actually have, which is this. It's a very tiny burr headed thing. I'm just going to go in and try and remove, or like, how can I say, sand down essentially the plastic, so that when you move it, the clearance is greater between the surfaces than it is already. Which is a very tedious job, but let's go on with it. Okay. So Mr. Sinister's head is in the way. So you can see that in there there's a bit more clearance. I'll just use our knife to clear off some of the burrs of plastic that are left. So that's given us, that should help us a bit in the future when we come to the painting point. Probably if you stretch it out and make sure you take down that bit as well. So that should helpfully reduce some paint rub. Now I'm going to go through and do that to the joints, so you don't have to watch me do that. I think you'll be quite glad of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and I'll see you when that's all done. So I've worked on some of the joint rub there, and hopefully that will be it. So what I said I was going to do was show you how my sculpting material works to fill in the peg holes here. Anyway, this is my sculpting material, Milliput, super fine white, and it comes, like I said before, in 2 parts. This is a new box I've got here, but I've got some already opened. I've got the 2 parts. Now, in case you missed what I said in the preparation stage, this is an epoxy putty. It's made of 2. I'll show you. It's got a bit of plastic stuff in it. It's made of 2 sort of squidgy materials, and they by themselves they stay in this sort of Play-Doh-like state. When you mix equal parts of the 2, they start to have a chemical reaction and they begin to harden over a few hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock over my camera apparently. What I'm going to do is take equal parts and mix them together. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is get equal parts, and just pull off a section and roll it out between your hands into sort of a snake. Okay, so the reason I'm rolling it out into a thin sort of snake is because it makes it easier to judge the amount we've got, because we do have to mix roughly equal parts of it. If you have a lot more of one than of the other, then it won't harden correctly. It'll harden to a certain extent, but it will still, I don't know, it just won't go right. So yeah, that's actually quite good from just my rough estimation. About the same. I think that's pretty good. So I'm probably using more than I should here. You should always try and just make the amount you think you're going to use, but just for the purposes of illustrating how it works, I'm using quite a lot. So what I do is to mix them evenly, make sure that we're getting a nice even mix to it all. I twist them round. However you want to mix them is okay, this is just what I do. Twist it round together. Start mashing it in. Okay, and then you just want to start kneading that for a few minutes. Just any old way. So. It's fascinating stuff really, isn't it? No. Okay. Really, that should be it mixed. So there we go. Let's see what the rest. And put them away. Okay, so whenever you come to work this material, you can work it with your hands. It does stick to your hands quite a lot, so good idea to have water just to dip your fingers in helps it not stick, but can also help it not stick to the plastic. Alright, so I'm just going to go around and pop the bits. So we want it to be at least be big enough to cover the hole. So that's probably too much. So just wet my finger so it doesn't stick and lift off, just press it down. And we can come in with our dremel again later, or just some sandpaper or anything, and even it out. But really, I'm going to be sculpting over a lot of this arm with his sort of cloth sleeves. So that's just what I'm going to go around and do. Whether you want to sort of go and put all the clay on first and then go and come back later and squish it in with your watery fingers, that's up to you. But I'm going to be putting, I'll cover up this hole if I've got enough left. So we're putting it on his elbows, his wrists, his knuckles, his knees, and his ankles and toes. So those are the joints we're covering up. He has a flight stand hole here, which I think we'll keep, to be honest. You never know, could be useful at some point if whoever it is wants to have Dormammu flying. And I'll show you once I've done all that. Okay, it's now about 3 hours later, and I've went round and covered all the holes that I said I was going to. I've also, for some reason, I felt the need to cover up the detail on his crotch. You could probably make a psychological study about that. So I've gone round and covered up all those holes, the ones here. And you can see I didn't just cover that hole up, I also tried to keep the definition of the muscles a bit. I'm going to sculpt over it with the costume detail later, but it's always good to try and keep as much as you can. The milliput is basically hard enough now that we can go in and handle it and we won't have a fear of rubbing it off or anything. It is still quite malleable. I'll show you. It's not quite malleable at all. You see it still has a certain amount of bend to it, but it's just going to break or crack. There you go. So it doesn't have any elasticity to it anymore, so it's becoming like the stone that it does in the end. And that'll be fully cured in a few more hours. So that gave me time to think about what else is going on, and so in the next part we'll take a look at Dormammu's costume and using fodder and the milliput a bit more creatively to create the costume details. See you then.